Century Fox and George Lucas bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Stop that ship! Faster! I'd forgotten how much I hate space travel.
Here they come.
They're coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time. It's an epic of heroes.
Hit the accelerator!
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds.
Go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile.
Star Wars. 1 billion years in the making. The Force will be with you. Always.
Hey there, welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Oh, that music, it brings it all back to me, that theme, that iconic theme. Star Wars, 1977, of course, that's what I'm talking about. This could take a little while, so be patient with me. I've got a lot to mention about this one. It touches on a lot of things about the period that I grew up in, but it's still relevant now. And it's still, I think just recently there's more spin-off movies being released. There seem to be endless TV series as well. So this is just a juggernaut. It became bigger than the industry and just became a cultural phenomenon across the world. What's it about in a nutshell? Well, it's a sci-fi space opera, but in reality, it's just a mythic good versus evil story. The rebels versus the Empire, personified by Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker, and to a lesser extent Han Solo and the droids R2-D2 and C-3PO against Darth Vader and the Emperor. And of course, mixed in amongst that is this central idea of the Force as a spiritual energy connecting everything, like a religion, really. And it's a battle of technology and control on the side of the Empire against belief and intuition and all things humanistic and emotional from the rebels, the good guys. So, all the way back to 1977 when this came out, I can remember seeing it. I don't remember a lot about the viewing. It was in the Old Town Cinemas there in Wollongong in the school holidays, I think. And I would have been 4 actually. So yeah, Mum took me along. It's the first cinema experience I can remember. Now, like I said, I can't remember too much about the film, but I can remember the excitement around the event. It was an event. I had been to the cinemas before, but I don't remember them. I got told about going to a few things, and apparently went to quite a few drive-in movies. Jesus, I wish I could remember that, because that's really from another age now, and sounds really cool, but never experienced that as an adult. So first world problems, I guess. I didn't fully understand the story of Star Wars, obviously, as a 4-year-old, but I got the overall picture. It's pretty hard to miss. It's pretty hard to miss in this film. I was completely absorbed by the usual things, the lightsabers. You know, what a gimmick. Obviously the spaceships, space itself. I remember being wowed by the stormtroopers. They just seemed, just the look of the stormtroopers looked fantastic. The scale and the spectacle of everything. That immediate sense of good versus evil storytelling, the sheer scope of it, and the way that people reacted to it, obviously, stood out. And Darth Vader, extremely frightening. Looking back now, it's actually probably inappropriate to take a 4-year-old kid along to watch that, but it was a different age. Thank God, in so many ways. And I don't remember actually having any lasting effects, having any nightmares or anything, but I do remember what a scary all-time villain. That voice, that presence. It's kind of hard for me to remember too much more, and it sort of morphs into Empire Strikes Back a bit for me, because by the time that came around 3 years later, I was like 7, nearly 8. And in a vastly different, those 3 years are like 10 years as an adult in terms of understanding, or probably more. So, yeah, just remember it being a big deal. And then you could relate to other kids you knew and talk about it, and you had some cred. But the thing about the Star Wars films and other big films growing up was that the film didn't end when you left the cinema. So you walked out, and that was like the start. Sometimes the movie was like, can't wait to get out of here and reenact it with my friends, talk about it. And that became far bigger than just sitting there in the cinema for 2 hours. You go to school, or you go to play school, wherever I was at the time, or friends, even my parents. I could not stop crapping on about this movie to my parents. They keep reminding me of that. Then it was starting to draw the characters and the ships, and eventually collecting the action figures, which I've still got to this day. For a long time, they were something to take out and play with. I'm an only child, so I had to find my own amusement, and that sufficed for a long time. And I knew everything about those characters, and the packaging, the display cards, everything. So look, Star Wars really became a dominant part of my life, and everyone around me, really. It became part of the daily childhood play, and a couple of years later, when I heard that there was going to be another one, well, that was just even bigger. The anticipation for Empire Strikes Back was just hard to sum up and hard to describe, actually. And then it's been a funny ride with this film and this franchise, actually. During the early teen years, so we're now into the mid-'80s, by then Return of the Jedi came out in 83, and it's definitely the lesser of the three, and it sort of, with the Ewoks, and it was a lot cuter and cuddlier. Empire was the darkest, and this one was somewhere in between the first one. And I think because of the way that it just landed with VHS hitting around then, but not for all of us, and not having access to these films unless you bought them on videotape. And that was just like a crazy idea back then in the early 80s. Like, I do remember there was a rich kid at our school who did have access to things like this, and sure enough, had a copy of this on tape, and that just seemed like a few Christmases rolled into one. It was like, hang on, you can sit down and watch films like this all the time, and specifically this film or Empire Strikes Back, and it just seemed crazy because we were so conditioned back then that you saw a film at the movies and that was it. And then years later it'd come out on TV and be ads all through it, and that was it too. If you missed it, you missed it. No repeats, no backups. We weren't at the stage of having VHS, all of us, and being able to record it and have our own copy. That was a few years down the track. So you really switched on, you really paid attention when this film came along. But like I said, it was a long, funny ride, because by the mid-'80s, when I was in high school, this film had become the opposite then. It was uncool. It was like only babies liked this stuff. Only little kids liked Star Wars. Come on. Like, we were starting to get into things that we thought were a lot more cooler. You know, like horror movies were on the horizon, or even in between teen films, right? So Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Revenge of the Nerds or things like that were hitting us, and we were starting to find the humor in other things in life, and finding other things cool. Definitely not Star Wars, right? It was cooler to say that you hated Star Wars. So there was a really big shift, and plus you didn't get reminders of how good these films were because they were so rarely on TV. I remember when they did pop up on TV once or twice, it was like an event then in the early 80s. But so anyway, this franchise kind of escaped from my generation after that, and we didn't think too much more about it. And the action figures got packed away, and we moved into the usual things that teenagers get interested in. And I found The Shining and films like that, and then of course the reboot came in the late 90s. Not only the reboot, but George Lucas went back and fixed up lots of aspects of these three initial films, and by fixed up I mean remastered, updated some of the technology, the special effects, actually made some detrimental changes too, in my opinion, and I'm not original in that thought. So mid-90s and then late 90s, three more prequels came out. So those films predated the first three, and then of course now you've got this weird thing where the film I'm talking about now is called Star Wars A New Hope Episode 4, which just blows my mind in a way. I think it's really strange. Anyway, the whole franchise was revived, and around then enough time had elapsed between the initial films coming out that they were cool again, retro. Everything comes around again. And I revisited the films again then. Well, the first two anyway. I don't think I bothered with Revenge of the Nerds. Return of the Jedi. But definitely watched this film, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And yeah, they held up really well for certain reasons. And I then watched them again. My kids were born in the mid-2000s, in that decade. And so by 2010, 2011, I started watching these films with them. And it struck me then that the pace is a lot slower than I remembered. I just remember these films being mind-blowingly entertaining and action everywhere. They're actually not. There's a lot of build-up compared with today's films. And so they struggled with it. And that made me a bit annoyed, weirdly, that they didn't get it. Like, why wouldn't they get it? It's Star Wars. And that was really silly of me. But yeah, that was 15 years ago, and some of us mature later than others. Anyway, I've watched it maybe once in the intervening years, but not the whole series. I can't remember why. And then I sat down just now and rewatched it. What did I think? I was surprised by how well this film still holds up. Still engaging. It's still really entertaining. What strikes me now, though, is the performances and the charisma of the performers really goes a long way in this one. There's not a whole lot of story, but I still found it very, very entertaining, and it held my interest. There's the nostalgia factor, of course, but I was amazed by how fresh-faced and natural a lot of these people are. Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. I never liked this performance as a kid. I couldn't understand why lots of other kids wanted to be Luke Skywalker when we play Star Wars. Like, you always did this. We did it with superheroes as well. You'd pick one and that'd be you. Everyone wanted to be Mark Hamill because he was, I don't know, because I guess because he had the Force, maybe. I'll give you that. But he just seemed so naive and pretty similar to a kid. He just looked like a kid. Even then, I thought it wasn't great acting. But now when I look at it, I think, was that the intention? Was he actually perfectly cast as being naive and inexperienced to showcase some of the other characters? But also then throughout the series, maybe did George Lucas realize how Luke's story was going to change once he loses his family on his desert planet and matures and loses other things along the way, finds out obviously some pretty big parts of his life that he never knew, and his destiny. That's soon learned the word destiny watching these films. It's repeated ad nauseum. So yeah, maybe it was a masterstroke, but I still think he's actually better in this than I recalled. So still not great, but better. Carrie Fisher, growing up as a kid, obviously I thought back then we weren't schooled very well on the role of women in things. So I was a girl in this. No one wanted to be. I mean, we didn't play this with girls, so no one ever identified with Princess Leia unless it was someone's sister, and then it was like, yeah, whatever. I've come to see that it's an odd performance for me. Like, she's got a great presence and charisma, and she looks fantastic, and it's such a, I use the word iconic too much, but her look with those buns on the side of her head is iconic, and that look in the all white. But there are some odd things in the tone of her performance. Some emotional beats feel slightly restrained, and odd reactions to a planet being blown up, and then in the next couple of minutes she's all upbeat again. But now I can see why she caused a stir between Luke and Han Solo. She does have something about her, and I've seen her in other films like Shampoo and being interviewed, and obviously in the sequels, I think she gets better and better. So she's an interesting one for me. Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obviously, I found out later he only did it for the money, and he thought it was odd and weird and way beneath his station as such a revered British actor on the stage and screen. But a really strong choice again. He gives a lot of weight and authority to the role and the picture, and a great mentor for Luke, and brings that wisdom as does Yoda, of course, but it's much easier to identify with a human being, especially when you're young. And I was devastated. I remember that. I couldn't believe that he dies. But then it's taken me ages to realize that's what he wanted. That was actually him winning. I didn't get it at the time. I was just really heartbroken. Darth Vader, of course, just astonishing. And I'm still in awe of the way he is portrayed in this film. His stature, but the design, the heavy breathing, his power, his voice, James Earl Jones doing the voice, David Prowse inside that suit, he was a strong man, a well-known bodybuilder in the UK inside that suit. Oddly enough, he popped up in another favourite film of mine, vastly different to Star Wars, A Clockwork Orange. And he's the massive guy that ends up being like a bodyguard, like a handyman, like a in-home carer for the guy who gets brutalized by Alex and his droogs in that film. And you see him wandering around carrying this old guy around like he's just a teddy bear. So anyway, that's David Prowse inside that suit. But all of these performances and actors and designs paled in comparison to Han Solo for me back then, and still now. Harrison Ford as Han Solo, easily the standout in this film. I wonder if he wasn't in this film, where this film and the franchise would be. It'd still be a big deal, I suspect, if someone else had played the role, or if the character was a bit different. There's still enough going on, but geez, even as a kid, he was the man for me. He was just unbelievable. I always let all the other kids pick first, and they'd want to be Luke or Vader or I don't know. I just came and swooped in and always was Han Solo. I just could tell he had that natural charisma and the humor. The humor was what I learned early. And he's really the grounding force of the film, because he's easily the most relatable. Even though he was, probably late 20s or close to 30 or something, I felt like I could relate to him. I couldn't relate to Luke or anyone else. They're just otherworldly or not well acted. He just seemed like a guy that, like a cool older brother, or I don't know, one of my dad's friends that was really, really great to talk to and joked around a lot. And he had that great outfit as well, and the blaster, and him and Chewie, the dynamic there. And he was the pilot of Millennium Falcon, and it was a piece of crap at times, and then it was really awesome once he got it to function. So he was just brilliant. And Harrison Ford, I mean, how to supercharge your career. It's just incredible, where he ended up. And he's still acting now, but he did this, obviously the Indiana Jones franchise and Blade Runner. So many cool things, Fugitive. The list goes on and on, but there's a reason for that. He doesn't even have to do anything. Even in Blade Runner, which is a really dark film, filmed at night, raining all the time. Every time he smirks, it's like, oh wow, how cool is this dude? So for me, Star Wars will always be first and foremost about Han Solo, and I won't talk too much about Empire Strikes Back, because I plan to watch that one of these days. And if you think I was sad when Obi-Wan dies in this one, when Han Solo gets frozen and put away like in a coffin in that, I was inconsolable. I felt like when my teams used to lose grand finals, that's how bad it was. Felt like I couldn't go to school. Anyway, enough about that. So a real mix there. As with the direction of this film, George Lucas, what an obsessive, compulsive, technical genius, unsociable, billionaire. I mean, what a ride it's been for him. He came up with people like Spielberg and John Milius, who wrote the original screenplay for Apocalypse Now, and did various other things. There was this whole bunch of people. They used to mingle with Scorsese and all those budding filmmakers of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. They all came up together and did various things and competed with each other and worked out for nearly all of them in various ways. Coppola, of course, who was more like the older, more successful one initially with Godfather, just crazy success. The others had to wait a bit longer. And I think George Lucas probably thought the way things were going that it wasn't going to happen for him. Granted, he had American Graffiti in '73, which is a great film. I watched that a couple of years ago, and it was it's a fantastic film too, with Harrison Ford. But if you'd watched that when it came out at the drive-in or wherever, and then someone had told you this guy's going to be a billionaire and he's going to sell this space opera franchise to Disney for X amount of dollars, and he's going to have his own studio and he's going to be this mythic figure in Hollywood and the industry, I don't think anyone would have believed you. Apparently, this all came from a dream. That's one thing I've heard. This idea for Star Wars, and then he started building the universe. But he really, I read a book about him that came out a few years ago, and I've heard interviews with him and interviews about him, and he really seems to be someone who is much happier away from the limelight and just likes to have the films speak for themselves, and he gets his ideas out through his films. Very, very different to Spielberg. Spielberg's much more egregious. Not egregious. I'm doing this too late at night. Gregarious. And he's much less interested in human emotions. It's more about creating something that has a wow factor. So builds up that mythology. Apart from Han Solo, there's the interaction between the characters and the dialogue isn't always his strong point. It's more about showing you what a new planet looks like, or how it works, or let's listen to these different languages, like in the cantina sequence. You know, fantastic scene. That's about as good as his social interaction gets in these movies, I think. So just a really, really odd guy. But what a career he had. And he also had a part to play in the Indiana Jones movies. So very shrewd as to what audiences ultimately want. The world and the effects that were created, I found them still to stand up really well. Tatooine still works visually for me. It was one of the more interesting visual experiences. I think it was Tunisia they filmed in, and I found that natural environment to be just as interesting as some of the created effects, actually. And the cantina sequence, you know, who shot first? Was it Greedo? Was it Solo? Just the vast array of different races that show up in that cantina is incredible. It's still amazing. The practical effects hold up surprisingly well, actually, in this age of CGI. The ships and the models and the space battles all look really good. I think he took a fair bit from 2001, which came out the decade before. But it's still amazing to me when I found out how he did all that with scale models and innovative filming techniques. It's a credit to him. The themes, I touched on it. They're really simple but effective. Good versus evil. I did wonder if there's elements of, capitalism versus communism, humanity versus technology, maybe. But I think it's more like some of the films that my parents probably grew up watching, where it was goodies and baddies, or westerns with the guy in the white hat against the guy in the black hat. It really is marked out symbolically. It's so obvious, really, who you're meant to support in this, and that's the way it works. It's a real audience film. But I did notice, like I said, the pacing in the first half, and until Luke and Han Solo and Chewie and the droids get onto the Death Star, it's paced slower than I thought, but to me it's still really engaging and easy to watch because of everything that's going on, and for me it's bringing back a lot of memories, and I do think it's just amazing, those scenes on Tatooine with the Jawa, the little, and the Sand People, and learning about Luke and how the Force comes to him, and those early scenes with Ben Kenobi. I think they're really well done. But it does take a long time until you get to the confrontations with Vader. Whereas I remember, and maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I remember Empire Strikes Back being a lot quicker to get into the action, and it picks up pretty quickly. Of course, that was a different director. It wasn't George Lucas. He had done his thing, and he was happier to be like an overseer of that film. So the contrast for me as a child to now, it was just overwhelming that first time, and I was babbling about it, but I didn't really understand what was going on. In my teens and 20s, early 20s, I was a lot more critical and probably really unfairly harsh to this film, and probably talked it down a lot, and seemed to forget how much I just enjoyed this film and everything about it. Now, obviously, like with most things, I'm a lot more balanced, having been around for 50 plus years, and it's still a great film. It does drag a bit. It did drag a little bit for me near the end as well, now that I come to think of it, in the in the run up to Luke's race down the center of the Death Star there to ignite the reactor that blows up the Death Star. It sort of went on for a bit by then, and of course Han Solo isn't in those parts, but then he is at the end, and it's a real uplifting part at the end when they get their medals and they're fated, and your heart sort of leaps up again, and the music. I should have mentioned the music earlier. That score is just astonishing. I just have to hear that score, and it brings it all back. So what a great time to be alive. Late 70s in Australia. Primitive times in many ways, but we had things like this to make life enjoyable. So my closing reflections on the film. First ever cinema experience I can remember. Really the beginning of my relationship with movies. I'm so glad that this is the first film I can remember, and much bigger than a film, of course. It's a cultural and personal foundation, and lots of other people, if they ever were weird enough like me to think about these things, would probably agree. It's still really impressive after all these years. Granted, it's been touched up and changed a bit, but I think the original was just as good, if not better. So in a lot of ways, this film even feels stronger with perspective, not weaker. So yeah, I'll stop there. I mean, you could talk about so many other aspects of this film, but that's for other people to do. I've really summed up what my experience is with it. So that's Star Wars. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.